mean, I've always recommended, if you go back over the last 10, 20 years, at my gold company, Shift Gold, I've been telling people 2/3 gold, 1/3 silver. So I've always told people to buy some silver. But I've always focused more on gold because it's just easier to deal with. It's much easier to store. You buy silver is bulky, especially now at these low prices. It's really bulky. But
yeah, it seems like the silver mining stocks are still tied to equities. If they go risk off, it seems like the silver miners go down with it.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, they go down with stocks sometimes, and they go down with the metals sometimes. But I just think that they're just great buys. I mean, you could just try to figure out, why are they not going up? One of these days, they're just going to go up 20 or 30%. I mean, the whole group, and then they're just going to be going up, 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 up. So right now, to me, it's just a very easy thing to buy them. They're so inexpensive relative to what they're all going to earn. I mean, when we're going to get some pretty good earnings, I think, from these stocks for the first quarter of this year, which they haven't reported yet. But I think Q2, right, that just started in April, I think the earnings are going to be phenomenal because look at oil prices. And the currencies where gold is mined have not gone up anywhere near like the euro has or the yen. So labor costs have been held in check. Energy costs have been held in check as gold prices have soared. So, I mean, these are, this is going to be probably one of the biggest quarterly increases in earnings in gold stock history. And I don't even know if any analysts have even gotten in front of that. I haven't, no one's talking about it. But anyway, thanks, Silver.
Silver Degen. Yeah. If you want me to help you host and bring up more people, I'm happy to do it for you.
Oh, you did that last time, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, I'll bring you back up. You did a decent job there. There you go.
Oh, thanks.
Peter?
Trudy, yes.
Yes, we've been investing heavily in gold and silver, probably a little bit heavier in silver for the past 23 years. And my husband's been watching the U.S. debt clock just with increasing concern and just wondering how long can this go on? And that's part of the reason he invested that way. So why, and listening to you talk about, like, we want to delay the inevitable, why would we delay the inevitable? Isn't there an advantage to getting the show on the road with restructuring our economy based on value rather than, I don't know, it sometimes seems like we're just investing in and I mean, at large, improving our economy's basic rock bottom strengths.
So first of all, you're watching that debt clock and it's not really accurate anymore because we haven't really raised the debt ceiling. And so they're just fudging the numbers. And as soon as we get the official increase of the debt ceiling, you're going to see probably an extra trillion just, all of a sudden show up on that. So the debt clock is underestimating the debt. But look, yes, absolutely. The sooner we can have the crisis, the better. That's why I've wanted it to happen sooner. Because it's like the bigger the hole we dig for ourselves, the harder it is to get out. But the problem is tariffs are not the solution to the problem, right? Because the trade deficits themselves are not the problem. They're symptomatic of the underlying problem. And so if you just say, well, let's put up these tariffs, you're actually going to make our industry less competitive. And that's not what we need. We need free trade so that we can be as competitive as possible. The best way to reset the economy would be to do the opposite of what Trump wants, which is the Fed to pull the plug on this whole shell game and raise interest rates and start, really shrinking the balance sheet and forcing the government, the U.S. government, to really cut spending, not just talk about it with Doge, but real cuts to spending, including to entitlements and defense, to force overly leveraged companies out of business, to force consumers to stop using credit cards and start saving their money, right? So we have to go, in order to go to a nation of producers, we have to go to a nation of savers, right? That's what we have to do. I mean, people talk about all the money that China, everything that China produces. They produce so much because they save so much. In order to go, oh, somebody cut that off. Yeah, they have to save, right? So we have to force that transition. And the way to do that is with higher interest rates and big cuts to consumption, not just consumer spending, but government spending, because a lot of government spending just feeds into consumer spending. So we have to go from spenders to savers, higher interest, and from consumers to producers. The tariffs aren't going to do that. And the problem is, Donald Trump, and I said this during the campaign, Donald Trump was promising an immediate economic boom if he was elected. You go back and listen to what he said. If you elect me, from day one, inflation is going to go away. You're going to be so rich. Everybody's going to be winning so much. It's going to be incredible. We're just going to have the greatest economic boom. And I said, this is very dangerous stuff that he's saying, because the only way to actually make America great again is to go through a bust first. That's going to be very painful, and there's going to be a lot of job losses and financial losses and failures and bankruptcies. And he's not promising that. Now, I know that had he promised that, he wouldn't have gotten elected. That's not a winning campaign message. But, so that is the risk. And if we just do what everybody wants, we want the Fed to bail us out like they did in 2020 with COVID, like they did in 2008 with the financial crisis, like they did in 2001 with the dot-com bubble bursting, or the way Greenspan did in the 1990s with the Russian debt default, or the Asian financial crisis, or every different thing, every problem we've had since Greenspan, the Fed has come to the rescue. And that's why the problems never get solved, and they just get bigger and bigger, because the Fed's rescue is the problem. The Fed makes all the problems worse, because all they do is delay the consequences, but at the cost of exacerbating them. So that is the problem. Like, yes, let's rip off this Band-Aid, but we're not doing it the right way, and the public is not prepared for it. Everybody is still going to want the Fed to do its magic.
So what's your knowledge of history? Like, how do people ever, like, I'm a politician, I'm a local politician. How do you ever convince the public of a very unpopular move?
I think the only way it happens in, a country like this, democracy, is things have to be bad enough, long enough that the public finally is tired of the empty promises, like what happened in Argentina.
Well, yeah, but here in Canada, we've got 10 years of liberal, like, incredible mismanagement, and we're at the bottom of the OECD. And yet, it looks like we're still going to elect another same government.
Yeah, because things haven't gotten nearly bad enough in Canada either.
Good Lord.
People are brainwashed pretty stupid these days, let's be real.
But, Canada,
All right, thank you.
Canada is about to get saved, though, from a gold rush, a big boom. I mean, Canada has so much resources, and so Canada is going to, I think, experience a pretty good economic pop. Yes, they're going to be dragged down a bit, or quite a bit, by problems in the U.S., which has been Canada's biggest trading partner. But I think Canada is going to start trading a lot more with Europe and Asia, and probably even South America, and less with the U.S. And because Canada has a lot of stuff that the world needs.
We certainly do. And, but I mean, are we smart enough to leverage that? I'm not sure we are.
Well, I don't know how smart you have to be. I mean, it's going to be pretty obvious.
Yes, but if we don't, and this is something my husband's been saying for years too. If we don't mine it, others will. Yeah. It all depends. Like, for Canadians, this is something to keep in mind, because do we want it to build our nation's prosperity or someone else's? And increasingly, we've been voting for option 2. So
yeah, well, necessity is the mother of invention, and so something's going to have to happen. But
all right. Well, thank you very much, Peter.
thank you.
Hey, Peter, I had a question. Eric Young had a cool post. It was interesting. He said China, you check out the post in the Nest, and China unrolled their, I forget the name of the payment system last night, but it's pretty much instantaneous. The transaction fees are much cheaper. Do you think that has something to do with the price rise in gold today?
But no, what did they introduce? Is it a gold-based system?
No, let's see. I wish I could be more specific. And again, the I can read from it, but let's see. The STIPS 2.0 went live yesterday. The digital yuan.
Oh, well, look, anything that makes it easier to use something other than the dollar, I guess, is negative for the dollar. Yeah, I think what happened is when I got the co-host, maybe that's why I can no longer see how many people are in the room. I used to have a number.
You got almost 1,700 right now.
Yeah, I used to have that number on mine, and now it's disappeared. So I wonder if when you add a co-host, it goes away.
Yeah, these spaces are very glitchy.
But let me see what's going on in the market now, because you watch the markets, and so we're down now. So now the Dow's only down 970 points. So but the interesting thing too is the bond market is still quite a bit lower on the day. In fact, the yields look like they're about to hit a new high. And so even though you're getting all this talk about like the Fed has to cut, we got to get rid of Powell so we can have somebody cutting, and yields are rising. It's not like the markets are thinking, oh, that's good. We're going to get lower rates. No, the markets are already telling you that we're going to get higher rates, not lower rates. So that, what's been able to save every economic downturn has been lower rates, right? No matter what bad thing happened in the economy, the Fed was able to stimulate us with lower rates. That's why their stress tests that they give the banks always assume that no matter how bad stuff gets, interest rates go way down. Because they've already built in the assumption that if there's a bad recession, well, they just cut rates to zero, right? But what happens if there's a bad recession and rates can go down? Because inflation is higher. Everything is low. Everything is low. I mean, if you take the financial crisis and you multiply it by 10, and that might not even be as bad as it's going to be. Because all those big banks, every single one of them fails. So what's it like when Wells Fargo fails? Bank of America, JP Morgan. What happens when those big banks fail? Now, you call 10, 11 fail. So, it has to triple to get back to where it was. Now, part of the reason is that these gold stocks have issued a lot of shares since then. And so, they've diluted the ownership of the company. They've had to raise capital to build out mines. But even with that, yes, the prices should be a lot higher. Now, one of the reasons that they weren't moving up is that for years, the cost of mining gold was rising faster than the price of gold. That stopped around 2023. And then ever since then, you've had a huge increase in the price of gold without a commensurate increase in the cost of mining. In fact, I'd say the cost of mining has probably gone down a bit. So that change has not been recognized by the market. And if you look at all the Wall Street firms that cover these stocks, and you look at where they project future earnings to be, it's always based on a gold price that's considerably lower than the current price. So Wall Street still looks at the rise in the price of gold with a lot of skepticism. They don't believe it. And because they don't believe it, they're not pricing it in to the gold stock, because the gold stock is not so much about today's gold price. It's about tomorrow's gold price. Because all companies, not just gold companies, they're the present value of your future earnings. And so the analysts have to make a judgment call about what are these companies going to earn in 3 years, in 5 years, or 10 years, and then factor that into a present value to figure out what the stock is worth. Well, if they all think the price of gold is going to crash because they have no idea why it's going up, and they think it's like a meme coin, and they think it's like no different than fart coin, and it's just like a big speculative bubble, right? Well, I mean, Wall Street just doesn't like gold anyway. They think it's stupid. They go, why would anybody want to buy gold? And so that has to change for the investor money to come into the sector. But even if it doesn't change, the gold stocks will go up by themselves because the gold companies will be the biggest buyers of gold stocks because they're going to have so much income, so much free cash flow. The only thing they're going to be able to do with it is buy back their stock. And so the stocks are going to go up even if Wall Street doesn't buy them because the gold companies themselves will buy them. And the stock is going to disappear. And of course, they can also start buying each other, right? Some gold companies can buy out other gold companies. But eventually, the investors are going to figure this out. But that's why I'm just telling anyone that will listen to me, you just buy these stocks right now. That's why I've been telling people, like for the past month, don't even buy gold. I mean, I've never done that. I mean, I sell gold for a living. And I've always told people to buy gold, and then you buy gold stocks. But I've never seen the gold stocks so ridiculously cheap that it just, any money you have that you want to allocate to gold, that's where it should go. Because when you're buying gold stocks, you're buying the gold. It's just still in the ground. We just haven't taken it out of the ground yet. So that, as long as they're this cheap, you've got to buy these stocks. And I don't care. Don't worry if they go down a little bit. Who cares if they go down? They're going to go up so much. Unless I'm just completely wrong about this, and all the people who are buying gold right now, all these central banks, they're all a bunch of idiots. They're all overpaying. Now, I don't think they would be buying at 3,400 if they thought they were overpaying. And you know how they know they're not overpaying? Because they're looking at how much money they still have to invest. This is just the tip of the iceberg. And we're spitting out dollars. How big are our budget deficits going to be? $3-4 trillion a year? That money's going into gold. So it's, the people are going to kick themselves, if they didn't buy it because it's so obvious. It's such an obvious no-brainer of a trade. But it's just not that many people can get the no-brainer trades in advance for some reason. They don't seem like no-brainers until after the fact.
And Trudy was saying, how do we convince the public? A lot of these guys, there's that YouTube video floating around. These guys rather have a Hershey bar than a brick of gold. That's how far gone they are.
Well, those guys, they're not buying. I mean, they're complete fools.
Yeah, they're buying Bored Ape NFTs or something.
Yeah, exactly. That's who's buying all that crap. But eventually they'll figure it out. But gold prices will be much higher by the time. I mean, gold will be over $10,000 an ounce before they're talking about it.
Yeah, it's 100% because you look at GLD today, just saying it's almost up 3%, and you got the gold miners, the GDX at 0.71%. It should be flipped. It should be the gold miners up 6% with gold being up 3%. It's just insane.
Yeah, but also considering how much gold has already moved up without the miners moving up. But what's going to happen is they're going to start coming out with their earnings. And the earnings are going to be so good that these stocks are going to go up 20, 30% in one day as they come up with these great earnings. And then you look at a stock, even you take the big one, like a Newmont, which according to, if I pull it up, or like Barrick said 12 and a half times earnings, right? But no, it's not. That earnings forecast was based on the price of gold below 3,000. And when you're talking about the price of gold going from 3,000 to, let's say, 3,500, that extra $500 is almost all going to go right down to the bottom line, right? I mean, the cost has not gone up at all. In fact, the costs have gone down. Oil prices have tanked. And so that 25% increase in the price of gold should more than double the earnings that people are expecting these gold companies to have. So it's not at 12 and a half times earnings. It's at 6 or 7 times earnings. Well, why should it be at 6 or 7 times earnings when earnings are growing? Because gold prices aren't going to stop going up. They're just going to keep rising. So their earnings are going to keep rising. There's no other companies right now that probably have the earnings profile that these mining companies have, where you could look through with that kind of visibility and see just the price of what they're selling is going to keep going up, and they're going to keep selling it. The only problem is going to be if they run out of gold, in their mines. But, that's why they're going to start investing some of their money into more exploration and development so they can increase their reserves so that when they run out and we're 10 or 50, they have more gold to sell. But they will find more gold. They just have to invest money in looking for it.
Hey, Peter, can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
So first and foremost, thank you so much for having me on Silver Dungeon. Thanks for having me as a speaker. Really appreciate it. So Peter, I want to start off by asking you, I have 3 specific questions to ask, and then I'll let the audience go on. So number 1, I want to say thank you for everything that you've done. I think the everything that you've contributed to this community and how you've educated everyone on gold and silver and its significance is really important, and it's really helped me out a lot. But I want to return back to the gold to silver ratio for a second. Because in one of your recent podcasts, you had mentioned there's this very famous quote. It says something, paraphrasing here, so I do apologize, but it's something like, gold is the money of kings, silver is the money of gentlemen, or something along those lines. Could it be that the reason why we're not seeing silver really move is because, and let's just take a step back for a second, over the course of 10 years of me kind of following you, I've noticed that there's been this kind of displace and defer and deflect any attention onto gold. As gold has been, quietly creeping up, it's like the media has not been covering it to the extent that you have, has never been talking about its significance to the extent that you have. And it could be that the reason why maybe silver really hasn't moved is because the retail investors haven't really got wind of it.
I've said that many times. I'm surprised if you've been listening to me, you haven't heard me say that. But I've said that the central banks have been the primary buyers, and they have no interest in silver. It's just too bulky for them to store. It's not what bankers use. The public, and I know this too from being in the business of selling gold and silver. I've been doing it now for 20 years, more than 20 years. I started selling the Perth Mint in 2002, and I've been talking to the public. I know my customers. Silver, it's just a poor man's gold. I mean, but it's because people like to buy. When gold was like $400, $500 an ounce, and silver was $6 an ounce. People like buying something that was $6. They can, if you only had $5,000 you got a lot of silver, right? If for $5,000 versus how much gold you got. So it's just like people like to buy a low price stock, right? People don't love buying Berkshire Hathaway at whatever it is, thousands of dollars a share. People like cheaper stocks. That's why a lot of stocks split, because people like to buy the lower price, right? So silver, people buy it, and people buy silver even with the intent of maybe bartering it, using it, as a means to pay for in bad times. So I think because the public has not really been buying gold or silver, the financial media hasn't really been covering it. And with the distraction of Bitcoin, I think like a lot of the younger people who may have, $5,000 or $10,000 in silver, did Bitcoin instead. So I do think that that's part of the reason, and the financial media too has covered Bitcoin to the exclusion of gold or silver. In fact, whenever they even mention gold, they mention Bitcoin, and they keep saying, well, yes, gold is up, but if you only bought Bitcoin, you'd be way better off. So who cares? And to the extent that they even mention gold, it's just to say why it's just a shitty version of Bitcoin. So it's like,
I agree with you 100%. So, where does gold need to be for the masses to be able to wake up? Where do you? I'm not asking you to be. You're a great prophecy. Like you're able to see things before anybody else can see them. Where do you think gold would need to be before the public actually wakes up?
Well, well, my prophecy, my crystal ball is as accurate as that. So I know that they will eventually figure this out, but what the magic number is for the price of gold, I don't know what it's going to take, because gold's already at 3,400. The number is just so big. I remember like people gave me a lot of shit because I predicted $5,000 gold on CNBC one time in like 2011 when we were close to 1,900, and I really thought it was probably going to get there in a few years, because I thought we were going to have the dollar crisis that we didn't get. And so the fact that we're already at 3,400 and we haven't even had the dollar crisis. See, I didn't think gold could hit 3,400 with the dollar index at 98, right? I assumed that for gold to get to my $5,000 target, we would need a dollar crisis, because I was assuming we were going to get one, but we haven't even had it yet. And so the fact that gold prices are this high without any kind of dollar crisis is already mind-boggling. That we're up here, and no one cares. The stock gold has beaten the stock market. The Dow is now down to like 11 ounces of gold. In the year 2000, it was worth 40 ounces of gold. You're talking about a decimation. The stock market has been killed in terms of gold. Yet all the attention is on, how great the stock market is. It hasn't even outperformed, a gold coin in your underwear drawer.
Yeah. Okay, so Peter, one last question. I think you're absolutely right, and I think the reason why I asked that question is because I'm starting to see, the markets through your lens, and I'm also like bamboozled as to why things haven't materialized when the crisis is just right underneath everyone's feet. But here's my last question for you. In addition to listening to your podcast, you've always had a clear path that you would have wanted the U.S. to go down to fix the situation that the U.S. is in, right? You've always proposed through your podcast what would need to happen. I think one of them was to default on the debt, and everyone would have to take their fair share of that default, and et cetera, et cetera. And obviously, you've made comments today in today's spaces where you said that they picked the worst scenario possible, right? At the end of the day, yesterday, Donald Trump tweeted out something very interesting. He said, "The golden rule of negotiating and success: he who has the gold makes the rules." Thank you. Could there be, I'm just asking, and then this may be my question, could there be some sort of out-of-the-box plan that no one has put into their equation that could, why would he say something like that
Well, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why he was saying it, because he wasn't speaking literally about gold. He thinks that he's got the gold, meaning the U.S. consumer, right? That we're in the driver's seat, that we have what everybody wants. We're the world's biggest customer, and therefore we've got the gold and we make the rules. He's not referring to actual gold, because we don't really have the actual gold. I don't know how much we've got in Fort Knox, but it's not enough. And he's not talking about going back to a gold standard, because they're not going to do that, because that means massive economic collapse. Now that's what we should do, but that's not what he wants. He does not want the economy to collapse on his watch, so he can say, well, I needed to do this for the long term good. I mean, that's not what he's going to do. That's not what his ego wants him to do. So he's talking about it in the figurative sense, not the literal sense.
Okay.
Of the golden rule. Yeah.
Raymond, can you mute your mic when he's talking? No offense, it ruins the listeners. And
yeah, absolutely.
It's really frustrating.
No, you know what? I'm done. Thank you so much for taking the time. I do apologize. I'll leave it up for everyone else. Peter, thank you so much for everything you do for the community. Take care, everyone.
All right. Thanks for calling.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you about a specific company. I know that you are FINRA free nowadays, right? And so you can speak to individual names. And so I wanted to ask you about an Idaho-based company, namely Hercules Metals. So last year they got a.
Well, I can stop you right there, because I don't know anything about Hercules.
No, that's fine.
So I can't.
No, that's okay.
I can't really comment on it. Yeah.
But I wanted to just say that they got a $25 million investment from Barrick last year, and there are also rumors that Barrick might be redomiciling into the US from Canada, and that they might be going to Idaho precisely because of that company. And so, if you haven't heard about them, you should definitely ask Adrian Day to give you the scoop on that.
I mean, I leave all that stuff to Adrian Day, because he's forgotten more about mining than I know. So I'm not an expert in the gold mining industry. I just know what gold is worth, and so I leave the stock picking up to Adrian. And I mean, if there's a lot of potential in that stock, we may already own it in the portfolio. I don't know all the names that we've got in there. I just don't recognize that name, so I don't own it in my personal portfolio. I do own my gold fund, so if it's in there, then I own it. But I don't. As far as an individual stock that I personally bought, on my own portfolio, I haven't bought that one, so I don't know. But yeah, I mean, look. I mean, there are a lot of stocks that I like, and some of my favorite stocks have actually gone up the most of the bigger ones. But some of the best potential is some of these smaller ones that we own. Because, again, there's the sentiment, people are still more afraid to lose money in the gold market. People are, I'm buying the top. If I buy these stocks, they're going to go down. It's all fear. It's no greed. It's we need to replace the fear of loss with the fear of missing out. There is no FOMO in the gold stocks. None. There will be eventually. But, not yet. And that's the wall of worry that they're climbing. I mean, everybody is afraid that gold's a bubble and it's going to pop. And I don't know at what price does that mentality change to, okay, it's not a bubble, it's real, and it's going to go up, and it's going to keep going up. Now, is that 4,000? Is that 5,000? Is it 10,000? I don't know. But whatever the price is, gold's going to get there and then keep going higher. Let's go to JP.
Hey, Dejan, thanks for the mic, and thanks, Peter, for hosting this great chat. Peter, you made a couple of points on this call. I wanted to come originally talk about state legislation, but you just made a point on Fort Knox that I found really interesting. You're right. No one knows how much gold the U.S. has. The odds of them re-establishing a gold standard probably is pretty slim. But at the Sound Money Defense League, we've been working with congresspeople since 2019 to introduce a bill and to ultimately pass a bill to audit America's gold. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we'll have new legislation on this introduced. But This would be a full inventory of America's gold holdings, not just Fort Knox, but all of the places where America's gold holdings are purportedly stored. This would be a full assay as well, and a full accounting. You know, there's a lot of talk about whether or not the gold is even owned by the U.S. A gold bar can sit in a vault and change hands 1,000,000 times without ever moving an inch. So, you know, whether or not the gold has been swapped or leased or encumbered in any way, that's what the Sound Money Defense League has been working on the legislative side on the Fort Knox. So hopefully, you know, whether we are establishing a gold standard or whether Cynthia Lummis plans on, you know, selling the whole thing by Bitcoin, whatever, you know, crazy ideas are being suggested, before any of that, an audit ultimately has to come first. So on the federal side, the Sound Money Defense League is working on that.
You can't sell gold unless it's but this Cynthia Lummis stuff, that all right. Cynthia Lummis has been given a lot of money.
We can't hear you, Peter. You're roboting.
Yeah, Peter, your mic is bad.
Excuse me?
I don't know if your connection's bad or what, but we can't hear you. Your
I don't know.
mic
Well, it's the same connection I've had the whole time. How is it now?
It's spotty.
Yeah, I don't know. It's let me just check my internet if I'm still connected to it. But what I was saying about Cynthia Lummis is, look, she's been bought and paid for by the crypto lobby, and so her job is to talk about stuff like this. You know, it's never going to happen, but we need the information out there to stimulate Bitcoin demand. And so she's got to be talking about, we're going to sell our gold, we're going to buy Bitcoin, so that other people will want to buy Bitcoin now, right, before the government does that, so they can make that money, right? And so it's all about holding that carrot out there, right? Dangling it out there to generate investor interest in running to us. The U.S. government is not going to sell its gold. I mean, that would be a completely asinine thing to do. And it wouldn't even make the gold market go down, because if the U.S. government actually wanted to sell its gold, it wouldn't just dump it on the market. It would call up other central banks and say, hey, we'd like to sell this gold, and it'll all get snapped up off the market. And then we're fucked, you know, because we won't have that gold. And the price will be going up. And so the U.S. should be quietly buying gold. That's what China does. China buys gold, doesn't tell anybody. They're not idiots. So yeah, that isn't going to happen. By the way, I'm looking at the markets, and now we're starting to see a real sell-off kicking into gear. So the Bitcoin rally is rapidly unfolding now, which was up 2 or 3%. Is now 10.5%, but the markets are hitting new lows. It was almost 1,200 points. This is the low of the day, but bonds look like they're also hitting. I'm looking at TLT. It's on the low of the day right now. So I think the yield on the 10-year looks like it's above 440. NASDAQ now down 3 1/3%. You know, I think that we could take out, maybe even today. I mean, who knows? We could just have a big drop today, but we could be below where we were when Donald Trump put out that post. Now it's a great time to buy, which if you traded, it was a great time, right? Because he caused the Dow to rally 3,000 points by pulling back on the tariffs. But we could be below that level, maybe even today. I mean, we're still probably another 1,000 Dow points down, but we could be down 2,000. We could be down 3,000. I mean, a lot of bad shit is happening right now. And the market is still ridiculously overpriced. But it's also pulling down the gold mining stocks. You know, the GDX now is only up 0.2. I mean, it's almost negative. That means the GDXJ is probably, let me see if that one's negative. That's negative now. It's down a tick. But gold itself is still way up. I mean, it's not on the highs, but it's still up more than $80. It's still above 3,400. I mean, so if gold is up $80 today, these gold stocks should be way up.
Peter, you just made a really interesting point about China. Sorry, you just made a really interesting point about China quietly buying gold, and that should be what the United States is doing, and that is probably not what they're doing. Do you have any thoughts on states doing this? We've worked with states to establish gold reserves. Most recently, Wyoming established a $10 million physical gold reserve, and that's legislation that we're working on. Do you have any thoughts on states themselves mitigating some of this damage that comes from the Federal Reserve and the federal system, and protecting themselves, their own taxpayer, their own balance sheets with physical gold?
Well, to the extent most states don't have a reserve of anything. If anything, a lot of states have debt. They've issued bonds and things like that. But what states should do is they should begin a framework for having gold and silver as legal tender within the state, and they could even start creating a mechanism. They're not allowed by the Constitution to coin the money, right? So they can't make gold and silver coins, but they can make gold and silver legal tender, and they can allow the private sector operating within the states to come up with gold and silver that can circulate as money within the states, and they could try to get the federal government not to tax any gains by challenging the constitutionality of the federal income tax applying to gold and silver, because if gold and silver is legal tender and it's the only thing that states can make legal tender, the government really can't interfere with that by trying to tax it. But yeah, I mean, people, if we go through hyperinflation, people are going to want alternatives to the U.S. dollar, and so the states should recognize that and try to get ahead of that.
Hey, Peter. Hey, Dijon.
Yeah.
I want to mention something about the gold on chain and the probability of trading gold 24-hour every day. What do you think about that? It's coming to Solana anytime soon.
Well, there are several gold tokens, and I'm probably going to launch my own at some point. I don't know, to the extent that I'll see what's better, because I'm probably going to build a platform for e-commerce with precious metals. It was something I was going to do at my bank, and then the government wrecked that. But and I've talked to a lot of other companies that are doing it about kind of partnering with them. But I'm more inclined to just do it myself and maybe have start from scratch, maybe take on a partner. But I'm probably going to do it. But what's kind of held me back is there really wasn't a market for it yet. Most of the crypto market is the get rich quick scheme. I'm going to buy it. It's going to go to the moon.
Peter, I'm sorry, but I got to cut you off here. The thing is, there is a quite good market already, and the reason I'm saying, yes, you are right. There is already some sort of meme coin cycle and stuff like that people talk about, but it's not valuable at all. But there are oracles that track the prices of precious metals like silver, gold, even stocks, and you can just get these price feeds and put it onto your exchange, and it could be totally decentralized. And
the block. Look, you could tokenize gold and put it on a blockchain, and it works great. I mean, it works. The question is it even necessary to have the blockchain? But I'm probably going to do it, and I'll see where the demand is. But right now, every company I've talked to that is trying to get me on board with their token, and I look at their ecosystem, and there's nothing there. They're looking for me to generate the demand for them, because they haven't been able to cultivate it themselves. I mean, you can make these tokens, but if people don't want them, and so eventually they will want them.
You're saying is tokenizing something but not backing to something. In UAE there is a guy who is already doing it. It's called Oro. He's trying to have a reserve of gold in Dubai.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that are doing it.
But the thing is, money is...
I've spoken to all of them.
Yeah, but all right. So, but the thing is,
it's easy.
On the Solana, if you take a look at the ecosystem, the first DeFi app called, for example, Camino, there is already $2 billion worth of assets from different, good coins from good companies on there, and you can put gold on there also. Yeah. And
look, it's going to happen unless the government stops it. Because the main thing, see, the U.S. government loves stable coins when the U.S. dollar is what it's stable to, because then the stable coins have to buy treasuries, or they do buy treasuries. The last thing the U.S. government wants is a popular gold-backed stable coin, where it's stable to the price of gold, because that is a real threat to the U.S. dollar. And so, if to the extent that a coin started getting popular, they may outlaw it. That's the problem.
Or maybe Tether is backed by Chinese housing bonds.
Yeah, the thing is, like, there are several U.S. backed, like, I believe USDT and USDC Circle. These two are, U.S. dollar. But the thing is, like, when these price feeds become actual assets and people can back it 1-to-1, let's say if 1 Oz is 1 Oz on chain, then it's everyday 24-hour tradable asset, and you don't need any fee for reserving it or paying any taxes on it unless you want to withdraw your asset. I believe the digital one might look better, especially on UAE side, like the tax.
What would you pray for?
I pray for peace and for our soldiers. We all get together and
No arguments.
no arguments.
And how about for you personally? Is there anything you want in your life personally? If you could talk to God and He'll actually listen.
It's a lot. It's a lot of things together. I don't know what my words are.
You know what? The good thing is, Hashem, it's not too much. You could ask for everything in the world.
Silver is more
I
following
think
the
you
stock
listen to
market
me,
now,
not just
and
here.
the gold and silver stocks are following silver rather than gold, even though most of what they're mining is gold, right? They're still going down with silver. And I also think that when we do get the big move up in gold stocks,
Are you ready?
silver is going to
We're
be
gonna
going
cut.
up too. It's because it's going to be
The barriers
investor money
holding back
coming
the
into
bread
the
and the
space
comments.
to compete with the central banks.
It's a little
But
messy
the
in there. Here
central
is the
banks
comments,
aren't
all
gonna
bread,
stop
all
buying
leaven.
just because
Why
the
are
investors
so
start
many
buying.
Jewish people not going to
They're
sleep
gonna keep
tonight?
buying
Let's
just as
look
much.
at the different hats.
So they're just going to have a lot more
This guy's
competition.
wearing a yarmulke.
Gold, silver, gold.
He's wearing
That's
a fedora.
nothing like a gold
Here we have the
bull
strap.
market either, is there?
We got a black yarmulke over here.
No, I mean, look, we saw a crazy thing in
Franz is telling me to be quiet, but he's wearing a strap. The Rebbitzon's wearing a
but
shape. Are you wearing a shape?
yeah, I don't know if it'll get that crazy, probably, but I think it's going to be a similar mentality.
We got some more hats going on.
Hey, so
This
this
guy's
thing
wearing
with
a Russian casket, and we got a regular
Do you
black
think the
hat.
United States is completely behind the gold transition? Because last time I checked, I thought that we do actually still have a little.
When I started wolfing out these goggle glasses, I needed a website. Figuring out how to make one was pretty hard.
So do you believe that that's?
Yeah, I mean, look,
Ladies and gentlemen.
look, if we're being honest
Ladies and gentlemen,
about
age
how much
40
gold we
is
have,
where the game
and China's
changes.
being honest about how much
China
gold
game
it
changes.
has, then we
At
still
age
have more.
40.
But the question is, we may not be honest about it. But if you want to look at how much gold we have in relation to how much debt we have, then it's not even close. And China and other countries, like China, is sitting on $2 trillion worth of U.S. government debt and government guaranteed mortgages. So China has $2 trillion of dollars that it could just put into gold if it wanted to. And if it did that, it would obviously have way more gold than we do. Whereas we don't have the foreign currency reserves to buy gold. We have to print new dollars to buy gold. But if we started printing dollars to buy gold, the price of gold would go up a lot faster than if China buys it with the dollars that already exist.
That's a solid point. Let me ask you something a little wonky here. Let's say, to your point with the $2 trillion selling, do you think there's a situation where there's like a crazy revaluation? And maybe we do just say, okay, let's kill the dollar so we can be the first ones to get on this gold standard, and that kind of depreciates the value of our treasury.
America, we're not going to kill the dollar. The dollar may die, but not because we deliberately kill it. We're going to do whatever we can to prevent that from happening. I wouldn't even put it past Trump to try to use the military. I mean, when the dollar really starts to fall and it's obvious that countries are selling it, you don't know. I mean, because Trump's initial thing is, well, we're going to slap tariffs, and he said that anybody who's selling the dollar, we're just going to put tariffs on you, right? Well, when Trump realizes that the tariffs are an empty threat, that they're not doing anything, well, then what has he got, right? What else does America have? How do we punish somebody for doing something that we don't want them to do?
I agree.
Right? Well, we've got this big military, so
I agree. Yeah, I think nations all around through history, that's kind of the last resort once they're at the end. So I would agree. Let me ask you this too.
Yeah, I mean, I can see maybe Donald Trump says it's an act of war if somebody is selling the dollar. I don't know.
Hey, China's alluded to that rhetoric recently in social media posts too.
But Peter, do you think we're there? Do you think we're there yet? Though, do you think everybody is saying, okay, let's get hands off? Do you think he has anybody at the table? I know a lot of talks about India has been going on. They have a big population. They're not as advanced as China, but I guess they would seem like the suitable replacement if we decouple. And then there's other nations as well that I guess European Union nations, I guess, that are supposedly coming to the table. Do you think that everyone's just hands off of the U.S. right now?
Well, I don't know I'm sure that there are countries that are looking to, negotiate trade deals with the U.S. I mean, why wouldn't they? But again, I don't think people are kissing Donald Trump's ass, begging for deals like he claims. And even if we get deals, I don't think they're going to move the needle much when it comes to our trade deficits, because we don't get to the root cause of the trade deficits. Because trade is relatively free. I mean, it's not completely free, and all countries have various protective tariffs, including the U.S. And yes, everybody would be better off if all those tariffs went away. But the likelihood of all the tariffs going away are slim. And even if some of them go away because Trump, gets some deals that remove tariffs, in other countries and here, because I'm sure that if another country comes over and removes some tariffs, Trump's going to have to remove some tariffs too, not just the new ones he just put on, but some of the ones that we already had, right? Yeah, but it's not going to be enough to make a big difference. It's not going to. Trump thinks we're going to solve with tariffs. Meanwhile, there is revenue coming from tariffs. That's the income taxes.
You're going out, Peter.
If we eliminate the tariffs, yeah, I think every time I bring my laptop closer to my phone, I think that interferes with it. I think that if we give up the tariffs, then we give up the revenue. And so now what are we going to do? If we don't have the tariff tax coming in, well, how are we going to, close the deficits that are getting bigger by the other taxes? So it's like, on the one hand, they want to use the tariffs as leverage and get rid of them, but on the other hand, they're counting on the
Kind of went out on my end.
You guys still hear me?
I think I get it.
I can hear you now, Peter.
I hear you now. Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right.
I think the point was delivered overall, though.
Yeah.
Hey, Peter.
Who's next?
Love the macro talk. Really enjoying your perspective and everybody's. Let's get, if we could, get into the weeds here a little bit. A lot of us have some significant profits in gold and in some of the stocks, GDX, GDXJ. Is there anything you can recommend? Any thoughts? What do you guys do to hedge? I don't necessarily want to sell these positions out for fear that it's going to continue up. But is there any short-term hedging? Again, I mean, this could sell off 5 or 10%. Any thoughts on that?
Well, Well, look, obviously, if you are inclined to hedge, you can sell some call options on your stocks, out of the money call options, and take in some premium there as a hedge. Um, you know, you can pare back your positions a little bit. You can sell some and now reduce your exposure, and that gives you some dry powder to buy more if there's a pullback. Same thing with the calls. You sell calls, you get some cash, and if the market comes down, you can use that cash to buy more. But my thought personally, and I have a lot of my own money in these gold stocks, is that the gold stocks are my hedge. And even though my hedge is very big, I just think that even though they've gone up recently, and I have good gains recently, like over the past 6 months, 12 months, when I look back over my whole holding period of a lot of these stocks, other than like Agnico Eagle, and Wheaton Precious Metals and Franco-Nevada, and, some of these stocks where I've got more than 10 times my original investment in these stocks. A lot of gold stocks are only doubles for me or triples over 10, 20 years. And some of the stocks that I own are really no higher than they were 10, 20 years ago. So overall, I don't think I have anywhere near the gains that I think I'm going to get in these stocks. And I don't see the enthusiasm, the excitement, the frothiness that would make me think there's a major correction coming. The last major correction that came was Trump winning, and that knocked these stocks down 30%, even though the price of gold only went down 7%. And I bought more in that pullback. I don't think we're going to have another pullback that big. Could we get a 10% pullback? Sure, maybe even more. But the market is just as likely to double from here as go down 10%. So I'm just holding on. Now, I'm not buying more personally. I generally don't buy into the rallies because I already have so much. But I haven't been taking profits into the rallies either. Now, obviously, that's been a mistake because I could have bought back, especially given my Puerto Rican residency. So I have zero capital gains. So I don't have kind of the tax impediment that some people would have. Like, oh, gee, I don't want to sell it and pay a capital gains tax and then buy it back. I have zero capital gains tax. So I have a lot more flexibility, but I still haven't done that. I just think that there's such a big move coming that I just don't want to lighten up on what I got. I want the stocks that I have, and I don't want less. If anything, I want more, but I won't buy more unless the market gives me the opportunity to do it on a pullback.
That's the worst when it shoots up too, and it's kind of opposite of picking up pennies in front of steamroller, right?
Yeah, I think that I'm going to be very wealthy. Beyond where I am now, off of these gold stocks, because I think that most people hardly own any gold stocks. Even very wealthy people, wealthier than me, billionaires, I probably have more gold mining stocks than the typical billionaire. And so this, I think, is going to let me catch up to a lot of these guys, because eventually they're going to be buying gold stocks. They just don't realize it yet. Now, some of them might have started, right? Some of them might have started. But let's say you got a billionaire and he's got a portfolio of, $1 billion worth of gold stocks. He only might have 2%, 3% position in gold stocks. So I got more than he does, because I got 60% of my portfolio now in gold stocks. So, but there's a lot of people that have no gold stocks. Wouldn't be surprised if there are billionaires that don't have any money in gold stocks right now.
And it's a pretty small market when you look at it compared to the rest of it. So if we are facing capital rotation, I think it might explode possibly.
And that's billionaires. You take the typical guy who's got a $500,000 to a $2 million portfolio, U.S. guy, 50s to 70 years old. I would bet that most of them have no gold stocks at all, zero. And maybe the 5% that have gold stocks maybe they have 2 to 5%. So I think it's very, very tiny. I think eventually everybody that has a portfolio will have a gold stock allocation in that portfolio. Now, how high that might be, 5%, 10%, 15%. But I think at some point, every portfolio is going to own gold stocks. It's just going to be what advisors do. But they don't do it now. But when everybody owns gold stock, the price has to be much higher.
Yeah, that's where the wealth is actually going to be going forward, Peter. I'm in full agreement with the mining stocks. Your gold fund, Adrian Day is definitely the top of the heap in terms of analyst. Do you follow or do you like any other guys out there? Like I like Rick Rule as well. I probably put him up there with Adrian. Who else do you? Rick is a very smart guy. I wish I knew as much about the gold industry as Rick Rule. I mean, he's a very bright guy, and I've known him for at least maybe most of my adult life. I mean, we're not buddies, but I mean, I've gone. I'm happy to see him when I see him. I mean, we go to a lot of the same events, and so we're.
Let's go to Illinois.
But yeah, I mean,
hey, Peter. Follow-up question for you on gold miners and their performance. I'm looking at archive.org right now for VanEck's GDX fund, and in February 2012, it has the stock price of $54, and it's citing a 15 price to earnings ratio. Today, it's at 50.
Okay, that's the end of Peter's shift. I'm done with that. Thanks.